D-Lo 404 Boxing. All right, y'all. We know Claressa Shields took care of her business in her last bout and had her face-to-face confrontation with Savannah Marshall, who has an upcoming bout. I want to say it's next month. And if Savannah Marshall wins her bout, she and Claressa Shields should be having a showdown in the very next bout. And I do think that's for undisputed at middleweight. That will give Claressa Shields an opportunity to repeat as undisputed middleweight champion. You know, in the past, and I've stated this on my video, my previous video about this topic, and Claressa Shields has stated it multiple times, which is where I get it from. That's the source of my information. I'm just basically taking her at her word because no one has refuted it, including Savannah Marshall. But in the past, when Shields and Marshall were in a position to have a rematch of the bout in which Marshall beat Shields, gave her her only amateur or professional loss as a boxer. Every time they were in position to have a rematch, Marshall would lose the interim bout coming up to their bout. Of course, Shields won her bout because she hasn't lost a fight yet since the Marshall bout. But, you know, so I think there were like 3 such instances throughout their amateur career where Marshall was 1 bout away from fighting Shields and she would lose that bout. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying she lost the bout intentionally. I'm just saying she lost the bout. She wasn't, you know, for all intents and purposes, she wasn't good enough in the bout to beat her opponent to get back to a bout with Shields. With all of that being said, we have this fight coming up for Savannah Marshall that she must win in order to set up the bout with Shields. And this is a pretty big fight for women's boxing. You know, it's built on the fact that Marshall beat Shields as an amateur and is the only woman to defeat Shields as a boxer, pro or amateur. So with all of that being said, I started thinking about, you know, how bad should us as fans, how bad we want to see this fight? How bad do I want to see the fight? And I was reading back through my comments, you know, of my previous video about this topic, and it made me really think about, you know, I want to see this fight even if Savannah Marshall does go out and lose in March. And I thought about when Floyd Mayweather Jr. was getting ready to fight Zab Judah, and Zab Judah, well, I think he had to fight Baldomir first. And Zab went out there and lost to Baldomir. But the build up for Floyd versus Zab was you know, so big, and it was people so anxious about the fight. And it was the fight that had to happen. And Floyd went out there and basically gave Zab the opportunity anyway. And they put on a memorable fight. You know, it had a little controversy and all, but ultimately it was a pretty good fight. And a fight that I still go back and watch sometime today. And then, of course, you know, later on, Floyd, I think it was afterwards, Floyd did go ahead and fight Baldomir and beat him as well. But my point is that I think that regardless of what happens in Savannah Marshall's next fight, unless she just goes out there and gets destroyed, I want to see Shields versus Marshall next. And for the reasons that, you know, I stated earlier, that, you know, Savannah Marshall is the only female to, only fighter to beat Claressa Shields in a boxing match. She's gonna always carry that as a feather in her cap, no matter what. But it gives Claressa Shields an opportunity to even the score. And I feel like that fight still would be big enough, especially over in the UK, for them to put that fight on, even if Savannah Marshall were to go out and lose in March. Not saying that I anticipate her losing. I hope she doesn't lose. But, you know, based on what's happened in the past, it's not out of the realm of belief that she could go out there and lose. You know, so I definitely hope that regardless of what happens, we get to see Savannah Marshall versus Claressa Shields in a big showdown. I'm hoping it's for undisputed. But if it's not, I'd like to see Shields go out there and fight her regardless, and then go on and, you know what I'm saying, go on and do other things. But that's all I got on it. D-Lo 404 Boxing. Like, share, comment, subscribe. I'm out. Peace.